Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. Only 18 days remain until President Trump's sweeping tariffs hit Korean exports, and Seoul is running out of time. The Korean government has entered emergency mode, rushing to secure a broad framework deal with Washington before the August 1st deadline, with a phased negotiation strategy aimed at protecting national industries while fending off Trump's escalating demands. Trade Minister Yeo Han-koo warned that this is not Trump's first term, stressing that this is a time for choices and decisions aimed at finding a landing zone. Seoul is pushing a package deal that ties tariffs to investment, defense costs, LNG cooperation, and digital trade, while drawing red lines around sensitive issues like agricultural imports and wartime operational control. For a deeper discussion on this matter, we're joined by Pan Gil-ju, Assistant Professor at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy with us. Welcome, Professor.
Hello, good to be here.
And also joining us is Andrew Millard, Assistant Professor of International Relations at Changwon National University. Good to see you, Professor.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'll start with Professor Ban. So, with President Donald Trump ramping up pressure on South Korea by pushing for higher defense cost sharing on top of existing tariffs, Seoul has responded with a proposed package deal that links trade, investment, and security. What do you think? Why do you think the Korean government has shifted gears to suggest a package deal that merges economic and security issues, despite, initially it planned to do the opposite way?
The suggestion of a one package deal seems to show the United States that the Republic of Korea is more than willing to make a bilateral deal successful for both of them. In this sense, the South Korean government seems to believe that a proactive deal-making suggestion matters, particularly when confronting Trump. In more detail, what makes Seoul proactively suggest a package deal? First of all, the South Korean government is well aware that a top-down approach is a full-fledged formula under the second Trump administration. In particular, the top-down approach makes Trump himself play a leading role in deal-making. Similarly, since Trump seizes the initiative of deal-making, all items such as trade, investment, and security, as you pointed out earlier, are supposed to be on the table at the end of the day. In short, the South Korean government seems to believe that a one package deal is inevitable under this formula, and in doing so, it wants to proactively suggest this package deal in order to step up its leverage over the United States. Second, the South Korean government intends to send a signal that the ROK-US alliance remains cohesive and ironclad. Recently, the United States has been pressing the Indo-Pacific allies, particularly South Korea and Japan, to make a great deal with it. This intensified request could make the ROK-US alliance weaker without proactively addressing deal-making issues. If the ROK-US alliance is seen to be loosened, it could be bad for security on the Korean Peninsula because it could lead to North Korea's miscalculation. Pretty simply, I would say that a package approach has reflected Trump's preference, which is a top-down approach, and was intended to prevent the ROK-US alliance from being decoupled.
Right, so we took into consideration ties with Washington in making this package deal. Now, following up on this, Professor Millard, then what kind of specific negotiation cards do you anticipate the Korean government would bring to this table with this package deal approach?
So firstly, I agree that South Korea should be approaching this with the package deal. Let's face it, right now, America is the more powerful country. South Korea really can't compete too much with America. So it has to follow this package deal. In terms of its negotiating cards, to be honest, South Korea has kind of already put these on the table in the past few weeks, laying out sort of what areas it can negotiate in. And I agree with Professor Ban that doing this package deal, it does make South Korea much more affable. It makes the US maybe want to work more with the Koreans, and this is a great way. In terms of specific areas where there could be room for negotiations. There's quite a few, to be honest, and there's quite a few specific ones that the Americans will be looking at. We've mentioned agriculture just in the previous news broadcast. Agriculture is definitely always one that is very, in the previous newscast was called painful, but it's one that I think does need to be opened up. So I know America is looking at rice, beef imports, genetically modified foods, so all of those different areas. In terms of digital, we're looking at online platforms in South Korea. We're looking at the use of precision Google Maps in Korea. That's again something that the US has brought up. And all of these things are quite negotiable. I think there's a lot of room for negotiation on these areas. Other areas could be semiconductors, automobiles. Now, automobiles, they did do some negotiations in Donald Trump's previous term. So how much room there is for more negotiation on automobiles, that remains to be seen. But I think sort of the big areas would be shipbuilding and the Alaska LNG pipeline. Those two seem to be areas that Donald Trump is very focused on, especially the LNG pipeline. This is something that it's going to require huge amounts of investment, and America simply cannot do it on its own. It's going to require a lot of investment from third countries. Korea, Japan, Taiwan have all suggested they may be involved in this, but that's really where South Korea, if they say, yes, we're going to commit to this pipeline, and then also that links in with shipbuilding because Donald Trump's been pushing for more LNG containers to be built by the South Koreans. So I think really those are the areas where we could see a bit more leverage from the South Koreans.
Right. So Professor Millard has just given us some areas that we could cooperate and benefit with the package deal. What about Professor Ban? How effective do you think this bundling of trade and security issues would be as a negotiation method for South Korea?
Well, we have noticed that negotiations with Trump do not end in one session based upon prior examples, including the US-Japan negotiations. When US President Trump had a summit with Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba on 7 February 2025, pundits said that Japan did a good job in the talks. However, Trump has continued to ask Japan for more negotiations even after the summit, as we can see in his request for an increase in defense costs. As of right now, Trump is very grumbling at Japan while asking Japan to buy American rice. So the South Korean government is fully aware that negotiations with Trump are a long-lasting process. With these insights in mind, the effective solution to deal with this type of negotiation formula is to prevent Washington from using the salami tactics. In this sense, Seoul seems to think that the approach of linking trade and security could be more effective than separate negotiations. Meanwhile, there are two important things that South Korea should be careful about under this linking approach. First of all, a trade-off between economy and security should not be made. South Korea should not allow the United States to weaken its commitment to security on the Korean Peninsula just in order to maximize its economic interests. Second, Seoul should match the exchange and make it reciprocal. To put it another way, South Korea needs to clearly prepare for what it will give to the United States and what it will have from it. No trade-off and the reciprocal outcome matter not only for South Korea's national interests, but also for the ROK-US alliance and Korean citizens' credibility towards the negotiation team.
Right, so avoiding trade-off and making it clear what both sides would benefit from this latest package deal would be very important. So Washington continues to, pressure South Korea with this tariff issue, and some are suggesting that the transfer of wartime operational control, also called the OPCON, should be raised as a bargaining chip in this negotiations. Professor Millard, why is OPCON issue coming into the spotlight right now? Given Trump's foreign policy posture, do you think this could give Korea leverage in this trade security dialogue?
Well, so when we talk about operational control, obviously right now it's being brought up again, but this is not an issue that has just suddenly come out of nowhere. Operational control, this is something that has been talked about in Korea and the US really for the past 40, 50 years. So, I mean, we're going back to the Korean War when operational control was first handed over to the United Nations. Then in the 1970s, it was handed over to the Combined Forces, which is controlled by the US forces, Korea. But then since the 80s, we've had No Tae-woo, Kim Yong-sam, they've been discussing this with the Americans. We then moved operational control during peacetime to the Koreans in 1994. And since then, this has constantly been discussed between the Korean and US presidents of bringing back, of transferring the wartime operational control back to Korea. So even back with No Mok-yeon and George Bush, they decided on 2012 to bring this OPCON, wartime OPCON, back to Korea. But then there was the nuclear testing in North Korea and other issues that made it slightly unstable. And this basically delayed it. But this has again been an issue discussed with the sort of successive presidents ever since. And Lee Jae-myung, he's also been quite a vocal advocate of having this wartime OPCON being brought back to Korea. So this is not a new issue. This is not suddenly an issue that's come out of nowhere and taken everyone by surprise. Like I said, it is an ongoing one. But right now, in the past couple of weeks, Donald Trump has also been very critical of South Korea, including just the amount of resources, military activity that the US has over here in Korea. And so again, this issue has been brought up, but it potentially could be a very important issue in these negotiations.
Right, so it's not really surprising, it's not really new, and it's not really just whether OPCON should be on the table, but it's, how its timing should shift this balance of power in the talks. Now, staying with this OPCON, Professor Ban, National Security Office Chief Wi Sung-rak has stated that the OPCON transfer is a separate matter from tariff negotiations, drawing a clear line. What's the significance of Korea making that line and choosing not to use OPCON as a trade negotiation card?
Well, the OPCON transfer issue serves as the most critical security agenda in the sense that it determines whether the reorganized combined architecture between South Korea and the United States will continue to go without a hitch even after the launch of the new command post following the OPCON transfer. If the OPCON issue were on the table as a bargaining chip under the ROK-US negotiations, this complex issue could be taken lightly or economically, and by doing so, security could be weakened. The OPCON transfer is being made under the principle of a condition-based transfer, not a negotiation-based transfer. So the exclusion of the OPCON transfer from the tariff negotiation seems to prevent this concern from rising. Furthermore, the Trump administration could take advantage of the OPCON to allow American soldiers stationed in South Korea to be dispatched beyond the Korean peninsula more easily. Ensure strategic flexibility could be facilitated without a policy process for the OPCON transfer. If that happens, security on the Korean peninsula could be seriously vulnerable. In short, the South Korean government appears to exclude this OPCON issue to prevent these unintended risks from coming unintentionally.
Right, so they did it deliberately to reduce such kind of risks. Now let's look at the bigger picture of this. America's military strategy is shifting towards countering China, as we all know, and President Trump reportedly wants U.S. forces Korea to play a more flexible regional role lately. So if OPCON is returned to Korea, Professor Miller, could that directly lead to U.S. troop reductions or redeployment from the peninsula?
I think very possibly it could do. So as Professor Ban just mentioned, if we do transfer operational control back to Korea, this frees up some of those US forces in Korea so they could be deployed elsewhere in the region or elsewhere in the world. But I think it's kind of crucial that we remember exactly what OPCON means. So operational control, the reason why this was transferred from Korea to the UN and then back to the combined forces was because it was considered that South Korea at those times, and still now, did not have the capabilities and the capacity to defend itself. Now, during peacetime, it's now considered to be strong enough, so those peacetime OPCONs were transferred. But if they decide that wartime OPCON should be transferred back to Korea, what they're effectively saying is South Korea is now strong enough, it has the capabilities, it has the capacity to defend itself. And therefore, from the US perspective, if you look at it from Donald Trump's perspective, he's going to say, well, if we've decided that South Korea has those capabilities and capacities, why do we need to keep 28,500 troops in Korea, especially when they're not paying us what we think they should be paying us? So based on this, I think if OPCON is transferred back, the American administration, especially under Donald Trump, will seriously look at reducing some of those forces in South Korea.
Right, so any significant changes in troop posture would definitely lead to some regional significant moves. Now, meanwhile, hopes are actually high that the upcoming U.S.-Korea summit could help break the deadlock in this tariff negotiations. But with the tariff exemption deadline set for August 1st, which is just a few days away, time is running short. Professor Bond, what do you see as the key factors for arranging an early summit?
Well, answers lie in finding out what items South Korea can exercise its leverage over the United States. As you are well aware, Trump focuses only on transactions and bargaining. In this sense, the United States could be more active in convening the summit if it finds out that South Korea has many cards, which could also be profitable to the United States. In this sense, South Korea needs to pay more attention to items that Trump said in his own voice. In this sense, I feel the same way with Professor Miller. He clearly mentioned at least three things: South Korea's world-class shipbuilding capability, South Korea's role to play in investing the Alaska LNG development project, and then trade imbalance. For example, South Korea could suggest that it will prioritize American ships for their maintenance and repair to contribute to American Navy's readiness in the Indo-Pacific. So if South Korea raises these three issues to the negotiation table and suggests the specific role South Korea can play to help the United States achieve its mega goals, the motivation to convene the summit could be stepped up. What matters more is that these three items serve as optimal assets for South Korea to increase its leverage over the United States, contributing to better negotiation outcomes. All in all, I think that South Korea could take advantage of these items to at least postpone the exemption deadline and expedite the upcoming ROK-US summit.
Right, so we'll have to see how talks would unfold in the coming days or weeks. Now, to our final question before we wrap up our discussion. So all eyes are on this talks. This moment could prove a major test of South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interests. Professor Millard, in your view, what's the most critical element in navigating this negotiation landscape moving forward?
So you're right. You just mentioned there that Lee Jae-myung, he's been very focused, and we keep hearing this term, pragmatic diplomacy. And we've really known from the start that Lee Jae-myung, he wants to maintain a good relationship with the US and Japan and Europe, but also at the same time with Russia, which even for quite a few years now, he's been sort of more pro-Russia. And China as well. So he does have to sort of balance these things quite well. In terms of this specific negotiation with the US, this really is a big test. If he can maintain strength, and he's going to have to compromise. I think everyone knows that. South Korea is going to have to compromise in certain areas and give in to America a little bit. However, I think the key will be patience. And what I mean by that is, as Professor Ban mentioned earlier, the Americans, they keep changing their deadlines. They're a little bit unpredictable. What South Korea needs to do now is they need to go to the negotiation table with this package deal, say, we are willing to compromise and negotiate in this area, in this area, in this area. Show America, show the Trump administration that they are committed to maintaining a very positive relationship with the US. It doesn't mean that they have to have an agreement by the 1st of August. So the original trade tariffs introduced by Trump were supposed to come into effect by 9th of July. As we know, that date has come and gone and nothing's happened. The deadline's been pushed back. So if the South Koreans, negotiators, if they can show America this is what we're working on, if they can make progress, I don't think that the Americans will demand that there has to be something in place by the 1st of August. They just want to see that strong commitment. So Lee Jae-myung's group, he needs to stay sort of committed and stay strong and patient. And really, I think there needs to be a longer negotiation process for a much better deal, which is win-win all around.
Right. So indeed, it's very important for South Korea to, express willingness to make a compromise with Washington moving forward. It's definitely a pivotal moment, and this would definitely define Korea's strategic posture for years to come. So we will keep close tabs on the latest developments. But as for now, we'll have to wrap up our discussion at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Professor Ban.
Thanks for having me.
And Professor Millard, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.